Hi, I'm Zeff, Reeves, Managing Director of Tesoro Resources. Tesoro is a Chilean-focused gold company exploring and developing the Zorro Gold Project in the Region 3 of Chile, and we're rapidly expanding and progressing that project.
Zeff, good to see you again. Saw you back in August. I thought I'd take the chance to speak to you because we saw some of the Met test work results come out, and I do want to talk to you about that. But first, I've got to address share price. You're getting a lot of stick at the moment. You're getting a bit of stick because Chilean elections just coming up. People not sure what to expect. And secondly, they're a little bit disappointed with the resource that you put out previously when we spoke back in August, and they said, that's all connected to your performance rights. So how do you answer and address those two issues?
Look, in terms of the Chilean political situation, we see it as business as usual. They're about to have an election, and the left side of politics, the Socialist Party, have elected a fairly central left guy. So it looks as though it's going to be a fairly vanilla election. We don't see any major changes there politically for Chile going forward. And the Constitutional Congression, looking at the Constitution, are still busily working away, and I think they've got about another 8 or 10 months before we see anything come out of that. So, look, we've got elections coming up, as I said, towards the end of this month, early next month, I believe, and we'll see where things go from there. But look, the message that we're getting out of Chile is it's business as usual, and that's how we're treating it. And look, in terms of our maiden resource estimate, we obviously had telegraphed that pretty well to the market. We had thought, we've been in the market for quite a long time, that it's going to be a stepping stone to something larger. And in regards to the performance rights, look, there was a deadline on those, but again, you're looking at a company that was set up by the founders. We put over $2 million of our own money into the company pre-listing, and that taken quite a bit of equity off the table. So, the directors wanted to, and the founders are obviously aligned well with the shareholders to own plenty of the company and advance the project forward. And I guess that's where we're at today, where you've got a board and the founders own a fair chunk of the company, and we're very motivated to make our Zorro work, and it's starting to tick all those boxes.
So was that a case of that deadline came up sooner than you'd hoped, given COVID, given Chilean elections? So were those things not in the plan? No,
they were always, obviously the company got listed right at the beginning of the pandemic, so it was pretty tough to get capital at the time, and we had to really bring the valuation down on the company. Hence, we took all of our equity off the table at that point in time to do that. But, to the team's credit in Chile, we haven't missed a beat. So I guess what we've seen is that the project's just going to be bigger than we ever first imagined when we first got involved, and even from when we listed. I mean, we drilled 16 holes into the project prior to listing, and made a number of payments to the vendor and so on prior to listing. And, when we first got our hands on it, it looked as though it might be a nice, neat little 500,000 ounce gold deposit in a pretty favourable location to mine. And obviously, the more drilling we've done, just the bigger it's getting. So they're incremental steps to a resource which we think is going to support a project that's of significant scale.
So talk to me about the cash position at the moment, because you and along a lot of other precious metal companies have kind of get through this period until the market picks up again, whenever that may be. Are you good for money for now?
Yeah, well, at the moment, or at the end of last quarter, so we've got a quarterly obviously just come to an end, so we'll be reporting soon. But end of last quarter, we had about 13 million Aussie in the bank still. We were burning between 1.5 and 1.8 a month, but that's, foot family flat to the floor with 6 drill rigs drilling, and committed to our work programs to develop the project. So, there's some flexibility in there to adjust those if needed, but at the moment, we don't see us backing off at all. We've got a fairly good head of steam up in terms of moving the project along. And it really is stacking up to be a very simple, straightforward project, particularly with those recent net results that we announced.
Okay, so given that you've got 6 drills going, I mean, can you give, I think you put a press release about the expanding Tenera, sorry, I should say. What can you tell us about what you're seeing there? Because obviously the resource came out, it was sort of within the range that you had indicated, but I think, as I said, market was a little bit disappointed by that, even though you'd signposted it. But what do you think you're starting to see there now?
These recent announcements that we've had, so one thing, the resource was calculated using 148 drill holes. I think they've collared up to the 242nd or something, so there's a lot of data to add into the next iteration of the resource. The last 2 announcements regarding drill results since the maiden resource, I mean, they're just so consistent. We're just hitting gold in good widths every single time, 100 metre, 200 metre widths at a modest grade, but they've all got multiple zones of higher grade in there. So when I say higher grade, generally better than 2 grams, but some exceptional results we've seen recently, 30 metres at 5 gram type material. And that's reflective of these multiple high grade zones that we see through the deposit. So there's been a focus to delineate those a bit better. And the really positive thing, which is giving us lots of confidence with the deposit and really de-risking it, is those high-grade zones are really hanging together well in 3D. They're mineralised from surface. We've defined 4 of them really well now. They're a kilometre long each. They've been drilled down to 400 metres, and they just are persistent and they're predictable, and we're hitting them when we go and drill them, and that's reflected in the drill results that we're putting out in the market. So at the moment, those rigs are focused on infill drilling to not only increase the resource, but also to increase the classification of the resource, get more of it into indicated, so we can then start to use that for economic studies and scoping studies and the like. And we're also doing some extensional drilling, some beautiful material coming out, particularly in the south of the deposit. So we're continuing to drill down there. But the really exciting part is that we've attacked a few of the other targets outside of Tenera now, which we believe are part of the same system. So at Tenera East, at Drone Hill and Toro Blanco, and we're seeing some good material come out of those holes. We haven't seen any of the assays come through yet, but all those holes have hit the right ingredients, the right host rocks and the right alteration and structure. So I think, once you start to look at Tenera sitting in the middle as this, I guess, base load deposit, and then there's potential for other deposits around it which are part of the same system, you're starting to look at a pretty significant gold project that, I haven't been involved in anything like this before, where just about every hole we drill's got mineralisation in it. It's quite astounding, really.
So, I mean, from investors' perspective, the sorts of moments that we look for are obviously hitting 1 million ounces, right? That's a great one. Getting into production, all of these moments which you typically get kind of re-rates on. Can you give us any indication with regards to these extra 100 holes which were not on the first resource? When will they start coming in? You've talked about some step outs, you talked about some infill. I mean, and how quickly would you look to update the resource, first of all? Start with that.
Yeah, well, we're hoping to get an update out by the end of the year. Hopefully sooner rather than later. It just depends on how quickly the assays can come back to us. We can get them all into the model. And we think that resource will then form the basis for a scoping study and move it fairly rapidly through into feasibility next year. But that won't stop us drilling. I think there's significant growth in the deposit and significant growth in the actual project in the district. I mean, we've really only just scratched the surface in terms of how big this new district is potentially looking. I mean, I think I mentioned before last time we spoke, our geology team on site are now sort of giving me messages that they think Tenera might not be the main game. It could be the edge. Look, we don't know that yet, but we're starting to test those other targets now to really see, where this goes. But so far, some of the core that we're seeing out of some of these other areas is looking really promising. So we're quite excited by that.
So talk to me. I always talk to our subscribers about the different models companies and countries employ. The ASX companies seem to like to get into production sooner rather than later. The North Americans seem to want to drill the thing out until they, hit the edges of the ore body. So what is the model? Just confirm it for me. I know you said you will continue to drill, but is the plan move this thing through the studies and get into production, start the cash flow process whilst trying to work out the size and the scale of this?
Yeah, look, it's always been our intent to take this into production. I mean, the company was set up by guys who've got production backgrounds, and part of the attraction of our Zorro is where it's located. There's no better place in the world really to build a gold mine. There's power close by, roads, water, workforce, highly skilled workforce, and all the ingredients are there within close proximity to have a good mining operation. So we always wanted to take it to production, and we're at the point now where we're saying, so it's got that infrastructure. We're seeing this superb met come out of it, which is, a really big material difference that we see between our Zorro and a lot of other gold deposits. And we can talk a bit more on that if you like. And just the next step really is to, and we have almost the beauty of back engineering the size of this deposit. We've got a recent board appointment, Linton Putland. He's a mining engineer and he's come on as an executive and he's doing all that work. And he's basically saying, look, at the grades that you're seeing, this is how big a project needs to be resource size to make the economic decision to go into production.
Which is what? What's he saying?
Well, we don't know what the final numbers are yet, but, it's going to be a 70 to 100,000 ounce per annum production rate, probably at the grades and the met recoveries that we're seeing in, for where the project's located. So to support that, you're going to need somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 million ounces to form the basis of a feasibility study to go through to production. What the ultimate size of the deposit is, we simply don't know. As I said, the more we drill, the bigger it's getting. We haven't found the edges of anything yet. Certainly not the edges of the district and certainly not the edges of the deposit. And, it's one of the unusual positive problems that we have with Ternera is that it's not a simple planar ore body with a defined geological edge and you step off that edge and there's nothing there. We're seeing repeats of the host rocks, and where they are, they've got gold in them, and we've now identified those host rocks in a large district, and we're systematically going through our work, identifying where the best chances of having another deposit is or an extension to Ternera. So very unusual gold system in that regard. And it's one of the problems that Linton has to deal with, because he says, we'd like to put a tailings dam over here and a waste dump here. And the geos say, well, no, there's probably some more gold that we need to go and find over there. We need to do some more work before you start building stuff on it. So, it's an exciting problem.
But help me, Zeff. Help me with this though, okay? Because I need to grip that. I get what you're saying, that you can just keep drilling this thing out and it kind of keeps giving, etc. And I do want to come back to the met work, because I want to understand the so what factor there, which is you talk about systematic drilling. But the systematic drilling, which geos love, and they do things the right way, and you give them enough time, enough money, they'll keep going. But you've got a commercial imperative, and your commercial imperative is one, to your shareholders, drive that share price up and market cap and all of those things. So this feasibility study that you're talking about, you've given us indications, it's got to be 1.4, 1.5. How do you get those numbers done quickly so that you can feed it into the feasibility study? Given the money that you've got, the financial constraints you've got, well, I say constraints, you got 13 million as of last quarter, but how do you make that happen quickly so that gives you breathing room to do all of the other expansion work?
Well, we've already started a lot of that work. So that's been going on in the background for the last 6 months, and, collecting data on mining costs and contractors and infrastructure studies, environmental studies, and permitting, and all of those things that are required to build a mine in Chile have all been going on in the background. And in the meantime, which is the part that our investors and shareholders want to see, is how big this is, and that's being shown by the drill bit. Keep punching out pretty excellent results, and we also do have a responsibility to prudently spend the capital, so we don't just run off and drill, complete guesswork holes. So, for example, we just started drilling Toro Blanco, but it's taken about 12 months of solid work to define that target properly and decide where we'd like to put the first few holes, because it's always important, I think, as well, to help with that share price and to build more confidence in what we're doing, is that those first few holes into a new target do come back with positive results. And I think Toro Blanco really is going to be important to us. If that comes back with positive results, that's a material step change in the scale of the project, because that sort of opens up another 3 kilometres of strike to the north, and we'll have a lot more drilling to do. And then instead of 1.5 million, who knows how big we could be looking at. Right,
but the big number, the next number people are going to be looking for, is the size of the resource. If you think that's before the end of the year or even early Q1, what's the number that you think you've got to aim for there? I know you haven't got a lot of your assays back, but what are you going to come back to market with? Given what you just saw, the reaction that you saw for the last resource, you're going to need to delight people. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I think a couple of ways. One is probably to nudge it up over that 1 million ounce hurdle. Everyone likes to see that number, but the other thing that we're seeing is potential increases in grade. So, if we squeeze another 10%, 5-10% in the grade profile out of the project, as I spoke to before, those fault zones are really standing out as good, sweet, high grade spots, and they're at surface. So when you throw an cheap open pit mining operation at them, it makes a lot of financial sense.
Okay, well, let's talk about the network that you did recently. So you made an announcement. What does that tell you? I'm trying to work out what the so what for me is as a shareholder. So
the so what is the key takeaways from the network is that at a coarse grind size, and I'll make some comparisons in a minute, but at 200 micron grind size, a life of mine sample. So we took 10 samples, got about 500 kilos of sample, 50 kilos of each one, took a bit of each one and blended it together to come up with what we called a life of mine sample, something that was representative for the entire deposit at about the grade that we'd expect to mine at, which was 1.12 grams per tonne, and had some test work done on it. That test work showed us that at a 200 micron grind size, it recovered 94% gold, but 40% of it was recovered to gravity. So don't need to do anything more to it. Grind it to 200 microns, put it through a gravity concentrator, and there's the gold. And then the other part of the recovery was through cyanide leach, only for 8 hours, recovered it up to 94%. So it's like the ore only has to look at cyanide and it wants to dump the gold out. And the important part of it, the really important part of it, is the tails grade that we got was 0.07 of a gram. So what that tells us is that anything that's got the faintest trace of gold in it is going to be recoverable through that very conventional process. So when you go and look at a gold deposit in Western Australia, for example, a lot of those deposits are grinding down to 70 microns, 100 microns, they're pulverising it to dust. Our problem isn't going to dust, and the reason that 200 microns was chosen was that's the coarsest, just about the coarsest that the metallurgists think that we can actually keep suspended in the cyanide tanks without it all settling out and causing issues. So it's literally like beach sand. That opens up all sorts of cheap economic ways to extract gold out of the deposit, and at this stage, you start to look at primary crushing, crush it once and put it in a SAG mill. So you're not using a ball mill, so a SAG mill, so it's got low consumable costs, lower power costs. You can have larger throughputs at a much lower power cost and all of those sorts of things, and makes it a much cheaper processing operation and getting these massive gold recoveries. So that's really, opened up a good avenue of de-risking for the project and starting to see us, have opportunities to really leverage off that metallurgy in terms of including a lot more lower grade material in our mine plan.
Brilliant. Okay, so it reduces the cost of the recovery. Recoveries are good or exceptional, but the cost of doing so is much reduced. So what for me is you make more money.
Well, and not only the cost, it's reduced the risk. So this is conventional standard metallurgy. We're not using pressure leaching. We don't need to oxidize the ore. It's not refractory. It's just this beautiful behaving metallurgical recovery that is through a conventional, well-known process that is easily engineered and easily operated. So it really reduces the risk around, recovering gold out of the deposit. And as I said, that then sort of circles back around into the engineering and the resource, because you've got the low tails grade. You can pull the head grade down and increase the resource inventory and pretty well mine everything that's got gold in it. So it has advantages in how the stripping ratio looks and how the overall mine planning looks. So it's all highly advantageous.
Okay, so Zeff, I appreciate the update. I just wanted to come at you with some of these criticisms I've seen you get in the marketplace, and your answer is fair enough. But more importantly for me is it's business as usual for you guys, and what you're seeing through the network, actually, you're quite pleased with, seems to be.
Yeah, well, that's right. And look, the more we drill as well, the bigger it gets. And so, I think we're seeing a good, conventional, straightforward, simple mining project emerge out of this. We've had some recent board appointments. I mentioned Linton Putland. He's actually been working as a consultant on this for us for the last 4 or 5 months before he came on board. So he had a good look at it, and he's a mining engineer. And one of the, his main reasons for coming on board is he sees a real project here that is simple and straightforward. There's no red flags in it technically. So it's starting to grow. So all the geology team has to do now is get that resource to a size where we say, that's it, let's go and mine it.